Hello everyone, and welcome once again to an episode of Adaptations Across Countries. I'm your host, Carrie Anderson. The way of the warrior is a treacherous road, always fighting for your life and the life of those you're employed by. And yet, despite this rugged life, many movies have given us reason to admire it. Today, we'll be looking at two types of warriors, as seen in The Magnificent Seven and The Seven Samurai. Seven Samurai is the tale of 7 swords for hire, who have been asked by a poor village of farmers to help protect their crop from bandits. What ensues is a battle of 2 clashing groups, desperate to survive, for without this food, each party will die in the coming winter. And The Magnificent Seven is about the same thing, except gunmen, and in the Wild West. But there's slightly more nuance than that. Look, it's actually because of stories like these that I made Adaptations Across Countries, and because of the differences in culture. First, let's talk Seven Samurai. This was famed director Akira Kurosawa's first real film to work on, and he had a vision for this project. And what a vision! Samurai themselves have always been a popular subject of Japanese storytelling, and their stories were always the tale of loyalty to their feudal lords, like a knight to his king. But Kurosawa told one of samurai helping those in need. Even the villagers in the movie were surprised to find one, let alone 7 samurai who were willing to work for the food they could farm. For the first couple of samurai they approached, that was the case. Their pride was too great to help some meager peasant village. That was because during that time, everyone was stuck in their jobs. Farmers could only be farmers along with their offspring and their kids, and so on and so forth. Now, the Magnificent Seven has a small Mexican village that needs to be protected from a group of bandits, but those bandits actually have a bigger role to play. While the 7th Samurai bandit leader is in the film, I'm not even sure he gets a name. We get an understanding that he's prideful and dangerous, but not much else. But the bandit Calvera is pretty well thought out. He's charismatic, wrathful, witty, conniving, and well-spoken. Well, at least as well-spoken as a white guy playing a Mexican can be, but that's not what we're here to discuss. Now, the villagers are especially different from one another. While the Japanese villagers believe that samurai are the only way to fight off the bandits, the Mexican villagers believe they might be able to fight them off themselves. But they find out sometimes men come cheaper than guns. Now, some of this is partially because of the difference in ideology of the gun and the sword. In Japan, the sword is the man, but also a sign of status. Having a well-forged sword was only regarded for samurai and those of the court of the daimyo. Plus, use of the sword was considered an extension of the will of the daimyo through his loyal vassal, the samurai. Now, I know that the Mexicans looking for guns was an editorial mandate by the Mexican government, but I think it was a much smarter decision for cultural reasons. The gun is a constitutional right of an American citizen. That thought of the individual and the power of a single person is what makes the gun so powerful in many stories. It's both tantalizing and terrifying. It's not my subject of interest, but I highly recommend checking out Extra Credits' Myth of the Gun. It's mostly about why first-person shooters are popular in the West, but it delves into the philosophy much more than I can. Back to the villagers themselves, these are real characters we have to want to be safe, but it's a real hit and miss between them all. Both films show villagers divided on what to do. They talk about negotiating, standing up to the bandits, or even just doing nothing and hoping for the best. Though the Japanese are loud and expressive, the Mexicans feel like sad puppies, tired and defeated. But individually, they were more or less at their best. One detail I thought was brilliant was the inclusion of Kyuemon's grandmother. She was this woman whose family had been killed by some of the last bandit raids. When the samurai capture some of the bandits, she comes out, slowly walking towards their prisoners, and strikes them like a vengeful spirit. Kyoemon's grandmother was the perfect representation of the sorrow of these villagers, and a great example of how long the villagers had been plagued by these bandits. There was never an equivalent in the Magnificent Seven, which does hurt it a little. We do get a character shot dead in the beginning, but it is easily forgotten and is more there to show Calavera's ruthlessness. No, probably the best character is Miguel, the kind of leader of the village who tends to feel the pressure of both the safety and fearful concerns of his people. As such, he's never sure of the best solution and will flip back and forth between praising the seven or ousting them. Sustenance is a precious commodity for these villagers. They only have food to give and sell, so it's when the villagers feed the samurai and gunmen we see kindness in two different lights. The samurai feel almost burdened by the weight of consuming all they are, while the farmers are left to eat millet, but resolve themselves as they receive their payment so as not to insult them for their generosity. But the Magnificent Seven take another form of kindness. They actually give the wonderful meal back to the children. This alone is an act of kindness reminiscent of Christian values, which was prevalent to the time and to the beginning of the movie when Chris the leader and Vin the sharpshooter take a Native American corpse to be buried and fight up a group of prejudiced thugs that wouldn't let the native be buried. Now, some of them are copies, like the woodcutter, the stoic fighter, and the leader. But three characters are interesting to analyze: Okamoto, Kikuchiyo, and Chiko. Now, for the Magnificent Seven, they actually condensed two of the samurai into one character, which actually makes sense from a certain angle. Okamoto is the pupil-type character, ever obedient to his master, so he can learn more about swordsmanship. And even though he's young, he's still skilled enough to hold his own in battle. Kikuchiyo, on the other hand, is the exact opposite, older and brash with a chip on his shoulder. He's the kind of guy who acts on his own and doesn't care what others think. He stands out from other samurai mostly because he isn't one. He's a farmer who picked up a sword and called himself a samurai, which explains a lot of his behavior. He has no discipline, no precision in his kata, and no control over his emotions, unlike everyone around him who has probably been training since they were young. He's probably also the most likable character, since he's a good in-between of samurai and farmer that doesn't put up with either side if he thinks they're wrong. But Chiko is both of them, young and brash. Although he will do as he's told, he also doesn't tolerate people being cowards or high and mighty. While Kikuchiyo may be a wild animal, Chiko is more like an ambitious child who hasn't been weighed down by the experiences of being a gun for hire. Also, there's Chiko's love interest, which parallels Okamoto. In Seventh Samurai, Okamoto mistakes a woman for a man, causing awkward teenage confusion to occur before they start to trust one another and fall in love. But her father, who was hiding her gender in case the samurai were unruly perverts, catches her and slut-shames her for sleeping with him. By the end, she ignores Okamoto, realizing that they are from far different walks of life. Okamoto then walks away, defeated. Chiko, however, just meets his love interest after she comes down from a mountainside where the villagers kept the women away. Feeling cautious, the two become very guarded until they realize they love each other. It's not very different, but there's no father character to give that extra sense of contextual fear as in Seven Samurai. Some characters get more development or changed entirely, like the woodcarter Bernardo gets his own fan club of kids. Lee, who doesn't fit any of the other characters, has PTSD and is afraid of being called a coward for it. And Harry, who also doesn't fit any samurai, thinks the only reason these people took this job was because there's a secret fortune they're not telling him, which, given the gold rush of the time, makes for a very fitting historical characteristic. These were liberties, I understand, and help flesh out other characters, something I thought Seven Samurai was lacking. While you get to know the samurai during their stay at the village, some of them still don't stand out as strong as the Magnificent Seven. But in the end, sadly, most of them do die. In the end, I kind of think of Magnificent Seven as much an adaptation from a novel as it was its source. There's a lot of details glossed over from Seven Samurai that never made it into Magnificent Seven, such as all the times the villagers failed to find the samurai they needed, or even the woman in the bandit's hut as it burns down. And with that, sometimes it can change the emotional impact of the stories presented. Without a sense of struggle, that sense that failure is a possibility, there's a loss of emotional weight and makes the whole story feel plastic. But the emotional attachment to a character can bring added depth. When we lose a character we don't really know, how can we care? Each one of those stories has their strengths, weaknesses, and has done some things better than the other. With that said, though, how can this new Magnificent Seven hold up? My concern is how much they'll take from Seven Samurai and modern writing. Will the characters be one note? Will they be invincible action heroes that modern cinema has produced recently? Will the villagers feel important or just an excuse for a big fight scene? Or will this be about as big a movie as the original and produce 2 sequels and a TV series? Let me know in the comments and whether or not I should do a review on the new movie as well. And I will see you guys next time. Ciao!